3, 2, 1. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
But if all goes well today, we will mark a new first in NASA's storied history and usher in the commercial crew era of American spaceflight. There is astronaut Doug Hurley getting into his spacesuit, and he's being helped by one of the suit technicians there. He has flown into space 2 times before. He was the pilot. We can see now NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. He's talking to the crew, and it looks like Associate Administrator Jim Morhard is also in the room, standing to the right of your screen.
And these are great moments to get a last chance to talk to the senior leadership of NASA as they're about to go off and launch into the cosmos. And I think when you look at the
Our NASA astronauts.
Small crowd, but big cheers.
NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. Doug on the left, Bob on the right, waving to the crowd there to cheer them on. And there are their families right in front of them.
The virtual hugs, a very special moment. Fist bumps.
Are you going to be on good behavior?
Saw in the checkout, the suit room, that umbilical is being connected to the suit to provide cooling air to the astronauts while they're on the way to the pad. And those Falcon wing doors are closing.
Super sleek.
A rapid departure from the Astro van.
Yes.
Prominent NASA meatball.
Other boosters in that hangar as well, and the rocket and Dragon that is on the pad right now was put together, or rather finally integrated inside of that hangar and then rolled out to that pad to go up vertical.
And there it is, that looks like they've already gotten out of the car, and they are walking up to the elevator that will carry them all the way up to the 255-foot level, and then they'll have a couple of steps to get up to the level where the crew.
So as you can see, they have already arrived at pad 39A.
Core on countdown 1 at T-minus 2 hours and 46 minutes. The crew has arrived at the White Room, and its ingress is in progress on schedule.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX. Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
America has launched. And so rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream. 20 seconds into flight, stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 30 seconds into this historic mission. Flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9, and look at them go.
Falcon power telemetry nominal.
M1D throttle down.
We're throttling down to get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket. Reports say all systems are go.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
M1D throttle up.
We're throttling back up.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Countdown 1 is unmerged.
Separation confirmed.
And there's that call out. Dragon is now officially making its way to the International Space Station today.
A single purpose: to catch up with, rendezvous, and dock with the International Space Station, located somewhere 400 kilometers above the ground. Now in their first orbits around Earth, at an insertion altitude of about 220 kilometers, the 3 astronauts in the Soyuz certainly have a wonderful view. But there is work to be done, as they are still hundreds of kilometers away from the ISS, their final destination. The International Space Station began life in 1998 and has been orbiting Earth about once every 90 minutes ever since. The orbital plane of the ISS is fairly constant, while the Earth is always rotating. Projecting the orbit of the ISS onto a 2D map, we see a series of intersecting curves. The mission control centers in Moscow and Houston constantly monitor the position of the ISS and can predict its expected location in the orbit for any given time in the future. Rendezvous is defined as the sequence of maneuvers governing the approach of two space vehicles to one another. In most cases, one of them is the chaser, performing the maneuvers, in this case the Soyuz, while the second is a passive target vehicle, in this case the International Space Station. Ideally, both vehicles meet up safely at an exact pre-selected point in space and time. But how does the Soyuz achieve this? Well, the Soyuz has to climb from its initial insertion altitude up to the same altitude of the station, and then join and stay on this orbit. It sounds like a simple enough task, but it cannot be done in one single maneuver, starting from the insertion altitude. Calculations for the final docking are based on a precise initial Soyuz altitude, and unfortunately, the exact insertion orbit altitude is not known in advance because of some unpredictability in the rocket launch. Therefore, two maneuvers are used, with an intermediate phasing orbit in between. The phasing orbit is the basis for the final docking calculations. It is reached using the first maneuver, called a Hohmann transfer, named after a German scientist from the beginning of the 20th century. During the Hohmann transfer, the Soyuz has to use its engines twice. The first time is to leave its current insertion orbit shortly after launch and transfer up to the phasing orbit. The second time is to get the vehicle traveling at the right speed to stay on that orbit. The phasing orbit is lower than the ISS orbit by about 100 kilometers, and it serves a very specific purpose. It decreases the phasing angle, or the angle between the two spacecraft in their respective orbits. Here we see the Soyuz orbiting in the phasing orbit, depicted in yellow, while the ISS is orbiting in a higher orbit, depicted in green. The third, red orbit, is the insertion orbit the Soyuz has already left. Because the Soyuz is on a lower orbit, it will travel faster than the station. Therefore, the Soyuz uses this phasing orbit to catch up with the ISS. Depending on whether the long or short rendezvous approach is being used, the Soyuz will remain in this phasing orbit for close to 2 days or just a few hours, however long it takes to reach the desired phasing angle. The second orbital transfer brings the Soyuz from the phasing orbit up to the ISS orbit. It's called a bi-elliptic transfer and requires 3 engine burns instead of the Hohmann's 2. From the phasing orbit, the first 2 burns bring the Soyuz up to the ISS orbit. The third burn gets the vehicle traveling at the correct speed to stay in the ISS orbit. The burns of the bi-elliptic transfer are calculated based on the precise altitude of the phasing orbit, and consequently, if the phasing orbit is too high or too low, the Soyuz will not meet up with the ISS as expected. The reason for using a bi-elliptic transfer here instead of the Hohmann's is that the Soyuz will not only reach the correct altitude in the close vicinity of the ISS, but also with exactly the desired speed. Despite these precise maneuvers, what if the thrusters fail to slow down the Soyuz and the vehicle travels too fast as it approaches the ISS? This could end in disaster, with the Soyuz crashing into the station instead of docking. To prevent this from happening, the Soyuz performs an additional side burn. This changes its orbital plane slightly and makes a collision between the two vehicles impossible.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, soft capture confirmed.
Copy, soft capture confirmed.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, hard.
We have Bob Behnken from SpaceX Demo 2 mission entering the International Space Station. Followed by Doug Hurley.
This is the ISS as it looks today. It's mainly used to conduct science experiments that can only be done in space. There's usually 6 astronauts on board the station. They generally switch out about every 6 months so that no one spends too much time in space. The station is about the size of an American football field. It's located just outside the Earth's atmosphere. This is called low Earth orbit. It's not very high up considering that some satellites orbit way out here. The ISS only takes about 92 minutes to orbit the Earth. That's about 28,000 kilometers per hour. Over time, the ISS will slowly lose altitude. If nothing was done, the station would eventually burn up as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. To prevent this, the station must be periodically reboosted to stay in space. The main countries now participating are United States, Canada, Russia, Japan, and many countries from the European Space Agency. Let's get to know the main parts of the station. The integrated truss structure is kind of like the backbone of the station. It holds the solar arrays to generate electricity, radiator panels, these remove heat from the station, and other equipment and science experiments are also attached. This part down here contains the pressurized modules, which means the astronauts can live and work in here without a spacesuit. All of the Russian modules make up the Russian orbital segment. The other side is called the United States orbital segment. It's made up of modules from the United States, Europe, Japan, and Canada. The different pieces of the station, also called modules, were built in many locations around the globe. Each module was then launched into space by one of these 3 rockets: the American Space Shuttle, the Russian Proton rocket, and the Russian Soyuz rocket. Once in space, it's time to put it all together. This is definitely not your average Lego set. Once construction started, the ISS took a little over a decade before it was considered complete. Each one of these lines represents the addition of a new module to the station. Let's go ahead and start.
And we have motion. You see Dragon physically separating from the International Space Station, 1:32 a.m. Central Time. The International Space Station, 253 statute miles over Sedan.
in the station is supposed to go into ISS thrusters enabled.
Copy.
So there you can see on your screen visual confirmation. What a gorgeous shot. Dragon has undocked from the International Space Station, and we are beginning the departure.
Dragon, they're looking for any perturbations outside of the expected path. If they see anything that doesn't quite look right, again, they're in the loop and they can send commands, but everything going smoothly with Dragon slowly flying away. And this is kind of an animated representation of the kind of stuff that the crew is looking for. They have that corridor, so kind of that triangular shape you can see there, where they're just looking to make sure Dragon's pitch, yaw, approach, speeds, everything like that are inside of parameters as expected. Dragon continuing to...
The problem is when a spacecraft re-enters the atmosphere 10 times faster than a bullet, the air can't get out of the way fast enough. This causes the air to get compressed, and due to the laws of thermodynamics, when a gas is compressed, it heats up. And as you might know, the gas gets heated up so much it actually turns into another state of matter, a plasma. Actually a boundary layer between that extreme compressed heat and the heat shield itself.
And so this is a view from that WB-57 airplane. You were looking at Dragon streaking across the sky on its re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere, aiming for a splashdown in just a little while from now.
So it's pretty exciting that we get this shot right now, as it is our first view from planet Earth of the Dragon capsule since it lifted off from Cape Canaveral just several days ago.
Basically, and then those parachutes are going to kick in. So those drogue chutes do the initial slowing, and then they're ultimately going to pull out the 4 main parachutes responsible for really slowing the spacecraft down prior to that splashdown.
You can hear cheering here at SpaceX headquarters as the employees that have gathered around our Mission Control Center are sharing the same view as you. What a gorgeous shot of Dragon coming back down.
And here come the mains.
So over the next few seconds, we will see those main parachutes just exactly like that begin to expand as they capture more air, further decelerating the Dragon vehicle down to the Atlantic Ocean.
Just about 750 meters to go. And it's continuing to descend under those chutes. We just passed 500 meters. Everything continuing to look good via reports to all the flight control teams. And just passing 300 meters, continuing to descend. We might be right on time. We were planning on splashing down at about 5:45 a.m.
And we have confirmation that Dragon is now under 100 meters, is 100 meters above the surface of the ocean.
So next up, standing by for splashdown.
confirmation of splashdown. Dragon has returned to planet Earth. It is now back home, and you can see on your screen our two fast boats racing out to the capsule, now in recovery.
Identical sibling ships named Go Searcher and Go Navigator, which one services the Gulf while the other services the Atlantic.
Right now we're just waiting for Dragon to lift up and out of the water and into the nest.
And there it goes.
And of course, before we would be able to open the hatch, we would have to make sure that the space
Departing from the space station, SpaceX and NASA will make a decision to depart based on the status of the primary and alternate splashdown sites. There are 7 potential sites, 4 in the Gulf of Mexico and 3 in the Atlantic, all surprisingly close to shore, with sites ranging between 35 kilometers and about 280 kilometers from shore. Now, these sites are chosen based on weather conditions, amount of time between undocking and splashdown based on the orbital mechanics, and whether or not the splashdown opportunity would be in daylight or not.